Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
Do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. Do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I see that which has been made hidden. As a part of a family that explores the consciousness. I'm the void one.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Welcome to Mind.
Broadcasting from a shack on a hill in the mossy creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop, and we're live on the Fringe FM. It's Friday night, July the 10th. Alex Tsakaris from Skeptiko podcast is back with us. And pretty famous podcast. We're talking all things metaphysical, paranormal, parapolitical, spiritual, and the skeptics alike. And Alex is not afraid to challenge the status quo. A man of his own beliefs and a man of many curiosities, just like myself. He's a brother and a seeker, so it's all a really good show to have on a Friday night. That's coming up real quick. We got to thank the sponsors of the network at GetTheTea.com, AncientLifeOil.com, and Metaphorical Archaeology. You know the number. Hopefully you got it saved in your phone. But if you've had a paranormal experience that's caused you any type of trauma, post-traumatic stress, anything like that, you can get a free session from Barbara Charlton, pro bono via the Fringe FM. Call 214-995-3754. And if you really want to study UFOs properly, you know the name, UFOseekers.com. That's where you go. Period. Right? That's just at UFO Seekers on Twitter. All right. So, real quick, make sure you guys, if you like the show, you want to support the show, sign up to our Patreon. It really helps out. Of course, you can donate and grab anything from the shop. I didn't get like masks. I got neck gaiters. So there's new like neck gaiters in there, but you can use them for hair ties and all kinds of different stuff. But it's showing pictures of them wearing a mask. And it's like, I couldn't find one, or they wouldn't let me design one that had a middle finger on it. But so I was like, whatever. I'll just put the, regular Lighting the Void logo on there. So it's in there. Anything like that will help support the show. We can sure use it, so we appreciate it. Call-in number for tonight when they open up the phones is 1-800-588-0335. You can also join the Fringe FM chat room by going to thefringe.fm/chat room. Now, most of you, I hope, know Alex Tsakaris by now, but if you don't, he's the host of Skeptiko podcast at Skeptiko.com, Skeptiko with a K. And over the last 10 years or more, Skeptiko has become the number one podcast on the science of human consciousness with millions of downloads, tens of thousands of worldwide listeners, and Skeptiko's provocative interviews explore the tipping points of science and spirituality. And many of the world's leading researchers and thinkers on consciousness and spirituality have participated in his interviews. And he talks about near-death experiences, all kinds of stuff on the show, actually, parapsychology, consciousness, astral travel, spirituality, the occult, UFOs, you name it. Yeah, you're a great guest to have on. I'm glad you're back. Thanks for coming on, Alex.
Hey, man, I've been super excited all week. This one's been circled on the calendar, like Friday Night Lights, circle this game.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, it's a good time. Like, I think you and I have a lot of the same thoughts about things, so it's kind of hard to tread those waters and get into a lot of this stuff with all the crazy crap that's going on nowadays. I don't know if you believe in astrology or those energies, but not just that, and the COVID stuff, the quarantine stuff, the politics, it's insane. I think we all just need a vacation from it. What do you think? You're ready to get off the planet. That's what everybody wants to do. Let's just escape. I think we should do that. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I think there's a lot of the stuff is like right beneath the surface, isn't it? I mean, you'll talk to somebody and they seem to be doing okay, and then you just accidentally say one or two things that, you know, and then they're just like, boom, you just see like their whole thing just drops, you know. Or, you know, what's interesting about like, I think you were kind of referencing like the entertainment, you know, everyone just wants to curl up with old 80s TV shows or something, you know, and just go back in the time capsule and just go, let me just kind of go back in time where sitcom was cool. And
Yep, absolutely. But I will tell you this though, and I'm curious about what your thoughts are on this. Is there has been a definite rise, if not in the practice or the study of things like metaphysics or the occult, and I don't know. I think last time you and I talked about that as well, but have you noticed that? I mean, even listening to like Coast to Coast AM, they have more people talking about magic than ever. I never would have thought that was going to happen, but it's getting pretty trendy right now, actually.
Well, it's getting real trendy, you know, and I kind of mentioned when we were chatting up a little bit before we turned on the old record button. This is something I really, really want to get into with you, because I know that you've made magic work for you. And I know, like, I just talked to Gordon White a few weeks ago about this new book I'm working on, Why Evil Matters. And it's got a lot to say about science as usual, but a lot to say about magic, and then a lot to say about religion too. And I want to pull you into this dialogue because I think you represent a really, I think, important group in this. And that's somebody who, you know, is really trying to take all the best of kind of positive development from the magic community and kind of direct it in this self-development way that I think a lot of people just look at and go, yeah, that's really great. But I think a lot of other people look at and I still have a kind of conditioned response that is, you know, wow, that's really, really dangerous, or that's really evil. And I think there's some aspects to that I would question too. So I think there's a lot to really, I'm hoping that we'll have that kind of spirited kind of discussion where I can learn from you and learn from the people you're talking to, and then we can kind of have that thing going on.
Yeah, sure. Like, well, I mean, as far as a moral debate goes, there's always going to be that, because there's always going to be those people that are afraid to tap into the spirit realms. And then you get into the question of, well, what's the spirit realms? Is it just a part of me and my consciousness? And is it really the collective unconscious? And if it is, then it's okay, right? But if it's all these separate things that I don't know about, or I think I know about because I think I'm so smart, and I go in there and do a bunch of stuff, am I going to mess something up? Am I going to hurt somebody? And these are all valid questions. These are all things that anybody should be, in my opinion, asking themselves before they get into this stuff. But who's going to investigate the truth about it other than reading or looking up facts? You know, you don't have to get all Aleister Crowley about it, but if there is a birthright that we are given that's been hidden from us and used against us, which I thoroughly believe that, now more than ever, then it's time that we all get access to it and let people decide for themselves. That's kind of what I believe.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. You know, I hardly even know where to begin with that, because there's just, you know, but let me take a stab at where to begin with that. And that's that one of the I guess the premise of this book that I'm working on is that, you know, I've taken the thing of saying, I talk about evil. I say, let's use evil as the lens, as the jumping in point to kind of sorting out what's going on in this extended consciousness realm. You know, you and I are talking, we're in this world kind of thing. We're talking about stuff that's going on. And then, but we all recognize that there's like this whole other world. And whether you get through talking about near-death experience or out-of-body experience or even parapsychology, or you talk about it with ayahuasca, or you talk about it with straight up, demonology or whatever, there is this extended realm. And I just look at how how we as a culture, and then how we're individually told to process that, and it's bizarre. It's totally bizarre. Because if you think about it, and this has always been my kind of thing, I'm just rapping on the same old thing, but like it's easy to forget that if you look to science just denies it all. I mean, they just say, well, of course, none of that exists. Evil, there could be no such thing as evil because your consciousness doesn't even exist. You're a biological robot in a meaningless universe, Joe. What the heck business do you have even contemplating that? But then there's, and then if you look to the other side, which as we usually see it in our culture, it's religion, and it's, for the most part, it's Christianity. And they go, oh no, buddy. Not only is there evil in these extended realms, but we'll tell you exactly what it is, how it works, and we will own that shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right, yeah.
And to me, like, I'm and I know I'm kind of, lately I've been really kind of riling up. The Christians already think I'm a Christian basher, and I'm not a Christian basher. People who have extended consciousness experiences with Jesus, you have a near-death experience with Jesus, and that's your spiritual kind of truth. Bravo, man. Hooray for you. But the general idea that you would kind of turn over the most important relationship you could ever have in your life, which is kind of your soul's journey, if you will, or your relationship with the higher light, or whatever you want to say. The fact that you turn that over to some guy because he says, hey, we got this old book here, I mean, I don't know how we've even been conditioned to think that even sounds remotely like an idea that you'd want to do, but mainly because we're all brought up with it, we kind of go, well, I guess, that's what my uncle does, and it's my older brother does, and I guess I'll do the same. What do you think about all that? I'm kind of rambling.
I think that's totally what it is. Well, that's part of it. The Christ story has got some super esoteric and hidden stuff in there that goes way back to a lot of different books. And I also believe, just based on, the research is the truth, and a lot of other things, that the story did actually happen. But, a man named Dr. Stylianos Teslis called him Joshua, and the other people called him Yeshua, but he was actually in a scene, and the story kind of got twisted and stuff. But the truth is, really, if you really look into this stuff, is the Old Testament is pretty much the Jewish stuff, and then you look into the New Testament. The New Testament was pretty much written by Rosicrucians, and Rosicrucians hid many of things in the New Testament. They hid pagan stuff in there. They hid Hindu stuff in there. They hid chemistry stuff in there. They hid numerology in there. They made these stories while integrating that story into a bigger thing so people could understand that it's not just a story with mythologies that hold a whole lot of different meanings, but that the consciousness itself, or the logos, or whatever you want to call it, is actually alive and does manifest in certain beings that come to this planet every now and then that are trying to show us what we're really here to do. And yet they've turned it into this thing where it's like, well, you got guilt. All you got to do is come down here to this altar, hold your hand up, cry a little bit, feel better, say a prayer, and we'll let your guilt go. Just don't do it again or you'll burn in hell. And that is missing the whole point. There's books out there that talk about how Jesus was a magician, like Jewish books, where he actually cursed people and things like that when he was a kid. I don't know how true it is, but the problem with this whole thing is when you, in my opinion, when you based all of your truth on one book. That's a series of books. This is the truth, nothing else. And that's great, but really, I mean, logically, think about that. It just doesn't make sense. How can you ever claim to know the truth when you're not willing to hear it, or if you believe it's just in one book? That's hard for me to wrap my head around, brother.
Yeah, me too. You know, years ago when I was kind of coming out of my Greek Orthodox indoctrination, which, you know, a lot of people do. You're brought up Christian, and then you kind of, like all of us, you hit some age and somebody hits you with some of this initial knowledge and you're kind of knocked back and you're like, whoa, I don't know anything about what I've been told and I've been kind of lied to. And anyways, so I've learned some of the things that, you know, I guess there's probably some holes and gaps in my thing, but if there was a path forward for Christianity, I really like a book that I read years ago by a guy named Brian McLaren, and he wrote A New Kind of Christianity. And the guy's a Christian, full up, you know, he's not like backing off of it, but he just had some brilliant things. Like he said, number one, we have to overcome the idea of that the Bible is an encyclopedia. He said the Bible is a library. You go to the library and you pick up a lot of different things. You know, you get a lot of more like you're saying, you know, you get, oh, numerology, yeah, you know, magical, oh, here, historical, here, okay, metaphorical, here, you know. But if you go to it as an encyclopedia, like, okay, look up whether God hates fags or not. Okay, yep, right here, you know, it doesn't work. You know?
Right, yeah.
And I only use that. And I only use that word just so you don't get banned or anything. Like, that's famous sign at Westboro Baptist Church, right? You know, God hates fags. That's not me saying it. It's Westboro Baptist Church marching around. So please don't
those people
Joe.
Those people are, I will give them this, they are bound and determined with their beliefs, buddy. Like, they've been on TV shows, all kinds of stuff, and nobody can talk any reason into their heads.
They're cults. It's and that's one thing I'm thinking, again, I'm going to piss people off. You're probably losing half your listeners right now as we go. I don't know how you look at Christianity without seriously understanding the cultish aspects of it. So that doesn't mean that, you know, hey, well, there's a lot of things that we do, kind of normal day-to-day stuff. You know, I like SEC football because my wife is from Auburn fan, you know. Hey, you go to the stadium, man, that's a cult thing, you know, and everybody, you know, we get it, you know, not all cults are, but there's a cultish element to kind of these things. But in Christianity, I think we all understand that there's some games that are being played there to your head that are designed to have you turn off the logic part and designed to let you to kind of lower your barrier there. And I think it plays into this idea of what we think about evil, you know, because we all know all the stuff that we're taught to think about and how we're supposed to understand evil from a Christian perspective. And I think that just needs to be to be reexamined.
It does. It all needs to be reexamined. What's evil and what's not, you know, like, we can't, it's kind of like the Constitution, right? Like, there's things that need to be amended here. And there's other things that need to be added in. We still, and I don't care what you guys say about this, we still believe it's okay to inflict pain on children when they do wrong, right? They're messing their kids up. We just inflict pain on them. That's what we're here to do. That'll shut them up, you know? And like, I personally don't believe that. So what people do when it comes to this stuff, and somebody wrote it down a long time ago, is they all came together and decided this is what's evil, this is what's not, and they had to have based it on somewhere along the line on how they felt emotionally or spiritually or whatever you want to call it when an act happened or something. Because I don't think that we need all the rules on a piece of paper. It's pretty evident, you know, for the most part, what feels like crap to us and what doesn't, you know, for the most part. There are some people out there that don't have the ability to feel, I can tell you that, but most people genuinely bad people. They just get corrupted, or they're dealing with their shadow selves, or they're dealing with, mind control or something, for the most part.
Well, actually, there's a lot to pull apart, I think, from what you just said there. I mean, starting with the end and the shadow stuff. What do we think? What do we think that really is? And then in terms of where this stuff comes from. But I'll tell you where I started with this thing on evil is really, I started with like the last time we talked, and we talked a lot about like near-death experience and this whole mission that I was on from the beginning of understanding consciousness. And what I came to really riled me up, I guess, at the end of the day, was when I realized that science is, as I said, so hung up on this wacky idea that there is no such thing as consciousness, is that, that minute experience, that voice inside your head that we all experience. And for science to just so adamantly insist that that is not real, that is an illusion, and that we are therefore meaningless. We're biological robots and life can never have any meaning. And I'm going over stuff here, but what I came to understand is that that isn't accidental. That's engineered into this system we have, because that kind of has a control mechanism aspect to it too. If you think you don't have any power, if you think life is meaningless, then you're a hell of a lot easier to control. You're probably a hell of a lot more susceptible to being depressed. All the things that, if I was trying to run a bunch of, trying to run the planet, that's what you'd want. You wouldn't want people that felt empowered and felt that their life mission was to figure out what's most important and to do those things. You hear where I'm coming from on that? What do you think?
Well, you definitely would want to tell them that nature's working for their highest good, and that there's a language that they could speak and symbol to it that will talk back and help. Because we don't, when you ask science, well, what is consciousness, right? What is emotion? What is this love, whatever? They're like, well, it's oxytocin and it's this and that. It's like, okay, right, whatever. But anyways, I understand that there's biological processes that happen, but why? Where does that come from? Where are the energies that cause these well, it's triggered in the brain here. Well, let's just keep tracing this back until the neurologists go, well, we think it's in this area here somewhere. Huh. Well, you had it all down till you got to the base of it, right? And now when they even take the brain, right? And they cut the meat in the brain, they see that it's transferring signals even when the brain's not put together like Wi-Fi. So this is just, like this thing is just a hard drive. It's just a computer. There's something, that's all it is. There's people that can function fully with a mush brain, messed up computer, messed up hard drive. But if I say, think about a pink elephant, and they can actually, most of you that heard that can picture it in your mind. And then I say, think about the last time, someone made you hurt your feelings. Think about the face of someone familiar. Think about the smell of a rose. And people start smelling it and all this stuff happens. But when you look at the mush brain, it's just fire and stuff, but they don't know where any of that is. Right. So there's something missing there, man. And it's like, well,
so
they don't know.
Why are we having this conversation then? Why? See, so here's the conspiratorial part that I want to kind of throw on the table, right? So why are we still having that conversation?
Exactly.
Why, when you talk to a lot of high level people, you're super nice in my introduction, but you talk to some really, really smart people, and I do too. And some of the people I talk to are right up front and go, I just can't say that stuff professionally, academically. I can't publish that kind of stuff. I just can't. Well, why would that be? I mean, if it's as obvious as it is to you and I, and we've done some research on it, but those guys are smart. They've done some of the research.
Yeah. Well, right. But they still don't. Why does a NASA physicist, when I ask him, well, what's consciousness? Well, I don't really know. What, the smartest people on the planet? Yeah, I know what you're saying. They don't have the answers to the esoteric questions.
Or they have the answers. Here's my concern: is there's two ways that might go. One is they have the answers and they're just, it's a misinformation. But the other is that, you know, if you have all the cheese and you can kind of lay it down in that maze, and you can get the rats to run any way you want, you know, and at the end you can make it look any way you want, but you know what's really going on. And isn't that what we find now? I mean, like the whole thing that's blown up with the whole Pizzagate Epstein thing, you know, which is now so outed. All that points to an elite, if you want to talk about that in that way, with that term, which I hate, but we all immediately know what it means, that is totally plugged into all this, right? I mean, so you know, in my book, Why Evil Matters, I have an interview with a woman named Annika Lucas. I told this story a bunch of times, so people already heard it from me. I apologize, but her story has to be heard, has to be told over and over again. Because Annika, at 6 years old, as a little kid in Belgium, was sold by her mother, who was a mentally disturbed person, into a satanic ritual abuse cult. That famous one, if anyone knows, that famous one that was all over the news in Belgium. This is a rerun of what we're going through now. So in Belgium, 1990s, go look it up. Oh my gosh, this goes to the highest levels of the Belgian government, highest levels of the European government. We got to get these bastards. We got to drain the swamp. They had all the They had photos, man. They had photos, Joe, of the cages. Some of these kids died because when they arrested the guy, he couldn't get out and go feed his victims that were chained up, these little kids that were chained up and locked up in these cages. So anyone who doesn't think this stuff is real, again, this is like in the news, not in the like the main news, you know. And Annika is living testimony at 6 years old to being sold into this cult, being repeatedly raped and traumatized by the elites of Europe and the elites of all over the world. So, and the reason I go into that is because some people, some people have a problem with evil. And I like to go, okay, but no one has a problem with saying that is evil. That goes beyond, you know, any kind of ambiguity we might have, or, you know, oh gosh, I don't know what I should, okay, no, okay, I give, right. They want to bury in their heads in the sand because it's so horrible. They don't want to talk about it. And then here's the part that you and I also understand as a part of that we have to pull out and we have to get to a deeper understanding of, is these people who are involved in this. And you know, we attach satanic ritual abuse to it because that's the name, but we don't really know what that means. We don't know what those entities in that extended realm that are involved in that, right? Because the people in this world are trying to connect with beings in that other extended reality that we're talking about. That is their purpose, is to seek alliance, seek power sharing, seek, you know, appealing to them for, you know, powers and stuff like that. That is their goal. So, you know, that's where I think we also have to understand that, and understand that at a deeper level than, you know, than we've been able to, because we're kind of bracketed on one side with science that says, well, I don't care what those people believe. None of it can possibly be true. And then we're like, well, of course it's true. Of course there's this extended realm. And of course there's beings there. And don't ask me to lay out how the whole thing works. I don't, but I know that's just insane to say that none of that is real and we have to deal with it. And then, like I said, on the other hand, you know, the only thing you have is a completely corrupted religious institution, and anyone who wants to distance himself from the Catholic Church and still say they're Christian, I don't know how you sort that out. But I mean, clearly there's deep systemic problems with religion. So where does that leave the average person if science is out to lunch and this is out to lunch? And then you have, one of the things I think we'll talk about today. We'll talk about the do what thou wilt, Crowley and West Memphis 3, Johnny Depp, wink and a nod, Satanism, isn't it cool? Mariana Abranovich, kind of stuff that we don't know what to do with either. And some of it is masquerading as a positive form of self-improvement when it's really not. And some of it gets more of a bad rap than it should, because there's people there who are really pursuing it from a purely positive self-development way, in almost as a reaction to, some of the other cultish options that are out there. And I've thrown maybe too much.
Well, yeah, I know what you're saying, and it gets confusing, right? Because nobody knows what's up or down when they look at it. All they know is, well, here's a bunch of guys that draw circles, and they got weird sigils and signs all over them, and here's what's happened in their life. You got so many people that idolize Aleister Crowley because he was an intelligent guy, but his life went in. I mean, I've read a lot of his books, but his life went to hell in a handbasket. So, as an all-powerful magician, why would so many bad things happen to him? It doesn't mean that magic is bad. It means that he went around and played with forces. As smart as he is, and all the names he gave all the gods and everything, he might not really understand yet. So, what I try to tell people is, like, we need to be careful, because I know personally, that there is a realm that is unseen, because I've been in it. And in full consciousness, full garb of consciousness, watching myself sleep, looking at things in real time, seeing figures and stuff, seeing elemental beings. I went there, right? And I've seen it. Once you've seen it, then you're like, whoa, your whole paradigm changes. Everything changes after that. I'm not talking about a lucid dream. I'm not talking about a nap or, something that just didn't. I'm talking about peeled myself out of my body, turned around and looked at it, went outside, went back into the house. I saw my son sleeping. It was real, more real than what you and I see now, more vivid, everything. And then I get a bunch of people that come on the show and say, well, that's just one level of consciousness or this or that. But if you really study it, you got two types of people out there. You got the conscious explorer, astral travelers, who don't really care about magic and the occult at all. And then you got the magicians who are using the forces of the planets and nature and everything else, and it's still causing them to pop out of their body. And that's what this is all about, is this battle in the unseen realms. And once you understand, like, emotion, there's really some big energies here that these elites understand. A big one is emotion. That's our broadcast signal. That's what shoots the energy out. And the next thing, the higher one than that, is the sexual forces, the alpha, omega, male, female. Putting those things together has created all of the universe. So these occultists, because of pretty much what Crowley spilled, but they knew this stuff beforehand, but he kind of really pushed it out. Understand that they can take these forces, bring them together, and create any scenario, anything they want, and especially if they do it at certain times, things like that. Doesn't matter. The real, actual sacred secret in the Garden of Eden story, and this stuff goes way back, that it's really about love. And this whole love thing, it was supposed to be a sacred act of these forces, and it is in all nature. But they took the animal side of themselves at some point and said, well, we figured this out. Now we're going to just call this love, or it feels good, so it must be love. Look what I created, right? Look what I manifested. And yet, power begets more power. When they realized it worked and they realized just how real it was, Well, what's more sacred than that? Well, I don't know. Children. You see where I'm going with this? And
I do.
This is what has caused all of the gender stuff, you can hate me for saying it, but all of the nuclear family idea, why we built everything around a house so it's all about that energy that everybody's trying to tap into. And it is love, but it's being used in other ways, and it's being used in crooked ways, and it perpetuates and causes karma and bad stuff. And it just, look at our planet now. Because somebody wanted to just have 40 concubines and say, well, I'm just going to be a master magician. They didn't think that there was more evil out there that was like, well, how can I get more powerful? How can I make it more powerful? What about blood? What about children? Yeah. How can we, spruce the power up here? That's pretty sick.
Can I ask you a question about, some of the specifics and the mechanics, almost like the technology of this? And I don't know if anyone's going to be able to follow this conversation because we're kind of diving right into the really deep stuff. But one of the things I've kind of come across is I ran across this guy because I've been pounded on this trail of evil, darkness, all this stuff. And skeptical listeners straighten me out. This guy sends me an email. And his name is Dr. Tom Zinzer, and he's a clinical psychologist. And he goes, Alex, let me help you out here, buddy, because you don't understand this darkness, evil thing. And he goes on to tell me a rather amazing story that he was a clinical psychologist for 30 years, hypnotherapist for the most part, working with people with dissociative identity disorder, like the split personality thing. And he goes on to tell me, this is, I'm going to do a little digression here because I just found out this the other day and it blew my mind. But I went back and interviewed my buddy, Dr. Bernardo Kastrup, who I think is just a brilliant guy. And he's really smart about consciousness and also philosophy, as a PhD in philosophy, PhD in computer science, and just has written a bunch of books on consciousness. And he pointed me to the fact that, this split personality thing has been debated among psychologists again, because you have your phony science psychologists that think everything is in the brain. And they said, well, that's just bull. That can't really happen. They're faking it basically. And they just have faking it as a polite way of, is an impolite way of saying, well, they have a brain disorder that causes it. So what they did is these German researchers found this person who had split personality, and one of their alter personalities was blind. So they claimed, and they go, well, that's just ridiculous. So Joe, they put the person, the woman, in an fMRI, and the neural correlates in her brain, where this is going, right?
Yeah.
They show up as blind. She's blind. She is blind. And again, back to this model, we have the current neuroscience model says that would be impossible. Because again, that model suggests that consciousness is an illusion. It's an epiphenomenon of the brain. You have no control over it. There's nothing above that. It's just the meat that you were talking about. It can't decide to turn stuff on and off. So it switches that, it calls into question that whole science and switches it into our world, you and me, where we say, oh yeah, that stuff is possible because we are controlling consciousness and how it manifests in the brain. So one, it proves that, or it provides a bunch more evidence that we already need for that. But also it says this split personality thing is real. So I'll tell you more about Tom Zinzer in a minute, but I don't want to bury the lead because it's kind of a long story.
Well, a person like that would have gotten, burned at the stake a long time ago because they were demon possessed. Now it's split personality, right?
Well, here's what Tom's research and detailed work in working with a channeled spirit who is advising him on how to consult with and help his clients. And he maintained a very clinical approach to this. He didn't go off and change his, PhD in psychology level training. He just applied what he was learning in that extended realm. And here's the point that I wanted you to comment on. He believes that this split personality, ego state separation makes an individual more susceptible to interference, attack, whatever you want to call it, involvement by external entities in these other realms. And when he said that, what I immediately thought of is MK Ultra. I mean, that was the game plan. That was part of the deal. Traumatize little kids so that we have greater access to some kind of extended consciousness capability they have. And it's almost like a technology thing. It's almost like a technique, like a trick to create a trap door in consciousness that they can latch onto. So here I got this clinical psychologist telling me the same thing that I'm learning from the conspiracy guys who are looking at MK Ultra. Do you have any insights into that, into this split personality, ego state, and its connection to some of the malevolent forces in the extended realm?
Well, I don't know too much. Well, I can tell you that what the doorways that they're using is the subconscious and emotion, right? So trauma, the subconscious or the unconscious, whatever people want to call it, the thing that's behind the scenes running all the stuff that you're not aware of is the doorway to the spiritual realm. It's the communicator, the microphone. And it works through symbolism, it works through trauma, it works through emotion, it works through color and smell and everything, right? And if you traumatize somebody enough, the unconscious is going to, and I don't know, I'm pretty familiar with how they do it, but it's going to bury that down, right? It's going to bury it down enough to where, yeah, you could have a split personality. You could definitely have, but you could trigger it to come back out if you wanted to, which is pretty... It's kind of sick. It's kind of working backwards because the magicians, they go the other way, right? So they speak in symbol, the occultists. They speak in movement and emotion and symbol and visualization because the unconscious or subconscious can understand that. And it goes, oh, I know what they want. And it speaks to the laws of nature, the forces in the spiritual realm, and then it manifests back. But to do it to a person, yeah, that's pretty much fundamentally how they do it. And all these people, these scientists that say, well, that's not true, this or that, none of them can explain a placebo effect. They just know what it is. What's the placebo effect? Okay. Well, how does that work? And then they go into a psychobabble, and then they end up stopping somewhere, So
that's such a great point about the placebo effect. It's like, well, wait a minute, full stop. Isn't that the whole thing then? That, how do we know that isn't the whole thing? It's like, it's a footnote in a pharmacological study of whether a medicine is ineffective, and you scratch your head and go, yeah, but isn't that right? The whole thing right there, that the person was able to do it all without any medicine.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I always explain it like this, because it's easier to explain this way. Like, you got a figure 8, and one side of that 8 is the physical realm, our realm that we see now, and the other side of that 8 is the spiritual realm. Where those two 8s cross in the infinity symbol, that little doorway right there is the same place that the placebo effect resides, the subconscious, and everything else. Once you learn how to speak to that doorway, you can bury things, you can manifest things, you can pretty much do what you want. However, there's a lot of people out there playing with stuff that they still think they know everything about these spirit realms based on what they've read and seen. And I don't think they've even come close to understanding what's actually in these spirit realms yet. I mean, they probably know a lot, but it's just like science. Science is probably just explaining the least of things, but they speak as if they know everything,
What do you think about the entity thing? We're throwing around that term a lot without, what is your understanding of what entities might exist in
I missed that last part.
Well, I mean, we throw around, well, like back to the point of these people who are with dissociative identity disorder.
Yeah.
And they are being interfered with by, malevolent entities. And it's causing problems in their life. So, we talk about demons, we talk about just earthly spirits that have died and passed on and don't want to give up their, whatever negative energy they have around here. I mean, I kind of think to me, it feels like an as below, so above kind of thing. It's like you want to go hang around with a bunch of creepy people.
Right.
You can walk into a room and feel that energy shift, instantly. But what is your understanding of when we talk about entities in those other realms? What are we talking about?
Well, I mean, it depends. Like from a good and evil standpoint, if you don't want to say good and evil, if people have a problem with that, then they need to understand polarity, right? And that if there's a good or there's things that feel good, then there's, in the whole universe, there's a polar opposite to everything. So imagine bliss. You can have it on earth in a loving way. That means there's a polar opposite to it. And in these realms, there's the same thing in the spiritual realms, right? And a lot of this stuff is been mapped out by the Kabbalah. It's also been mapped out in Theosophy. It's also been mapped out in Hermetics. There's planetary sphere realms that show all the different spheres and levels. There's chakra systems, and these are your internal stuff. And then there's places in the lower realms that everybody talks about when they astral travel, especially as soon as they come out of their body. There's all these growling gremlin things or a black figures, shiny black figures, jinn, stuff like that. Robert Monroe talked about a parasite that fed off of sexual energy. Then I've heard other people that haven't even read Robert Monroe's books that have got out of body and seen this parasite that just feeds off of it. Yeah, so there's some weird, icky stuff out there, and they've all been classified under different things. Elementals, which is stuff that we create, basically thought forms that we all agree on. We end up creating that stuff, and then they're just floating around, and they can never be destroyed. And then there's what we call demons, and then what we call just spirits, the Walking Dead kind of thing that are trapped. And then there's angels, and then there's jinn, and if you really want to keep going, there's demigods and all kinds of stuff. The truth is, it's there. It's just kind of like science putting names to things. Well, spiritualists have put names to these things too. We don't really know what they are. We know that they're there, and we know that they exist. And some of the best occultists in the world that have studied this stuff can tell you that they know all the names of these demons. There's armies of them. Armies that go in pecking order from the lowest kind of demon all the way up to hundreds of them, man, that go all the way up to the archangels. It's like the archangels are the mass generals. It goes down so far, then it goes even lower into the lower realms of the clip off or whatever they call it, whatever you want to call it. And it's what I come to understand about all this is, yeah, evil exists, right? But it's more of a dual thing that's going on that has to be here for life and consciousness to exist, which is still weird to me. I don't know why we couldn't have created a place without it, but for some reason it does. And what we call evil is real.
So I'm with you on that last part, but I want to back up because the part you said right before that really interests me, because you've heard all the stories of the soul retrieval kind of thing. And I've heard those stories. And I actually even did a demonstration on the show years ago with a medium reading. And I actually found this woman, and she says, well, I'm not a medium, but I go into these dream states, kind of like what you're talking about. And I don't know exactly what your out of body experience was, but what she claimed to do, and we did the demonstration. So what I did was I went out to all my listeners and I said, okay, contact me over on this email address over here so no one knows, and this and that, and I'm going to pick somebody. And I found this woman in Texas who had very tragically lost her daughter to suicide. And then I found Marianne, who was going to do the reading and does the dream work. And so I gave her like no information. I just gave her the first name of the person she was looking for. In her dream, she goes and first of all, she brings back all this evidential data, like to identify for the mom. And the mom is like in tears when I pass the information along. She's going, yes, yes, yes. And she goes, and, she got involved with this group at school and there were some other things going on. And that's why she killed herself. And this is what she looked like. And this is what she wore. And the mom is totally convinced that all this is completely matching up. But the part that I found intriguing is she said she's kind of lost and wandering around in this dark place, but I can bring her out of there. I can show her the light and she will follow the light if she's told to, because it's kind of a confusion kind of thing. And she said that she was able to do that. And like, we've heard that. I mean, I've heard that like a million times. And then I talked to Tom Zinzer and he says, yes, I learned how to do that. And I have a protocol for doing that. And I've done that with hundreds and hundreds of these entities that are interfering in my client's life. The best thing I can do is help those entities find the light and remove the shadow, and then boom, they're gone. They're absorbed into the light. Or I bring down their spirit guides and they move into the light. Or I bring down their family members and their family members say, don't be afraid. I know you're scared. It's okay. Come on to the light. So how does that fit into what you've learned and understand?
Well, I don't know how it fits into what I've learned, but I know that that there's a lot of people that talk about this too. I mean, if you read Journeys Out of the Body, if you read Journey of Souls, any of these books, there's trapped spirits, especially when there's energy involved. Again, let's talk about some of the biggest energies that are involved in these practices, whether they're accidental, it's just trauma, emotion, bad energy, addictions. There's been people, let's just call them dead people, spotted, still trying to have sex with other people because but they don't realize they're dead. Still trying to get a drink at a bar, still trying to smoke a cigarette, still hooked on these energies, which is why Rudolf Steiner and a lot of other people's really warned against things like drugs, alcohol, any type of addictions that keep you from spiritually ascending, because it keeps you trapped. It's all energy. So if somebody has an experience like that, you can imagine the emotional outpouring that comes, and especially if it's bad. And if we are children of the Creator, if our consciousness were little bitty creators that are attached to this creative system, if we have a dark feeling as we die and it's super emotional, then we're going to be trapped in a dark place. We're not spiritually sound. So there's been countless stories about this. These people that pass on need help to move on to the next realm. And there's always like helpers, angelic helpers, but there's a lot of wandering spirits around, man. Just to be honest with you. And I mean, that sounds horrible though. So it really makes you think about, like, when you die, how do you want to die? Do you want to die drowning, or you want to die getting burned up? Do you want to die in a peaceful way? All right. So we have to be conscious about how we die. We have to be conscious of a lot of things. We have to be conscious about what we're feeling and what we're thinking on a mass level, because we're broadcasting that stuff and we're creating it. We wonder why the world's so screwed up. And especially conscious, we ain't figured this one out yet, about the sexual energies and stuff. When there's no love involved and people are just doing it for animalistic reasons, and they wonder why all this perpetuating stuff keeps happening. It's all energy. And that's just another word for something we don't understand, just to be honest with you.
There's so much to really really learn and explore. And I think one of the interests I have and one of the goals I have in this, project is, I feel like, 10 years ago when I was, and I wrote, when we first talked a few years ago, I had written a book called Why Science is Wrong About Almost Everything. And the premise of that book was that if science gets consciousness wrong, like you're a biological robot, then it can't get anything right. And that's almost like true by definition. If you can't, if you say an egg boils at 212 degrees, and then you have some guy some magician or some guy who has telekinetic powers or whatever, which we know is true, and he can make that water boil like in a way that it shouldn't, or at a different temperature, which I don't know. I'm kind of making that up, but that's kind of stuff. You can't measure everything. You can't measure anything if you don't factor in consciousness. Well, hell, and I'm making up all these crazy examples. That's what the hell the double slit experiment was about 100 years ago, the basic experiment in quantum physics, right? Is it a wave or is it a particle? Oh, it depends on if there's an observer there, if consciousness is there. And they've run that experiment every which way scientists have, and they've never falsified it. And then you got people like Dean Radin, who you and I know, and he says, okay, I'll take you one step better. I'll take the photon beam, and I'll have a guy who's as skilled, I think the one he used was a Buddhist meditation kind of expert, and he'll interrupt the photon beam with his brain, with his consciousness from across the room. So it's like done deal. This shouldn't even be anything that we're debating, but we're still talking about it. But anyways, my point in all that was, I think one of the things that has kind of shifted the conversation is near-death experience science. We're all at this point pretty comfortable with the idea that there's a body of science there, over 200 peer-reviewed papers, top surgeons and doctors around the world. And they all come to the same conclusion. Hey, as near as we can tell, consciousness survives death in some way we don't understand. So that's progress. In that 10 years, we now have a body of scientific research that we can point to where people can look at it and go, I do have to say that is probably true. People can get there. I think we need to get there, make that same leap in terms of understanding this kind of stuff. Like you're saying, well, I think it maps out like this, and I think there's these kind of entities. And I'm with you. I've heard that from a million different people. Then we need to have some kind of understanding. So is that true? We need to figure that out, try and get to that next step. And then, like I'm saying, well, there's soul retrieval, and all you have to do is, reconnect to the light, and this and that. Well, maybe that's total bullshit. Maybe there's a kernel of truth. Well, I'm just being serious. I mean, what you could say the same thing,
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah. I mean,
right.
You got to keep exploring. That's the thing. Like, you can't keep saying, well, I got the answer. This is what it is. Damn it. We got to take a break. But yeah, that's exactly true. I can tell you a guy that negates just about everything, all the spiritual stuff, every spirit that he negates all of it, and still has probably proved consciousness still exists. Probably talk about that when we come back, but it's more about what you believe, and back to the subconscious again. Yeah, we'll be right back. We're here with Alex Tsakaris, Skeptiko.com. That's the website. Stay with us at the top of the hour.
Charlton from Metaphorical Archaeology. If you've ever had a traumatic paranormal experience, the effects of it may stay with you for years. Who do you talk to? You can't go to conventional help. What we do is we use emotional freedom techniques or tapping to actually neutralize the effects of that event. Maybe when you tell the story now, your heart races and your palms get sweaty. You don't even want to think about it because you don't know how to neutralize that. That's what EFT tapping does. It neutralizes those emotions. The circuit that was recorded on is gone. The energy flows freely and you're free of it. And that's what emotional freedom is all about. We offer this as a pro bono service, but this is something that I offer because no one, it seems, is helping people with these experiences. If you'd like to reach me, it's really easy. My cell phone is 214-995-3754. Please leave a message. I will get back to you as quickly as possible. Or you can email me, barb.eft@gmail.com. And EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. Reach out to me. It's confidential. This works. You won't believe the results.
Hey, this is country music singer and void walker Jason Benoit, and when I need my fix on the world of magic and the capabilities of the human consciousness, I listen to Joe Roop right here on Lighting the Void Radio.
All right, man, this is Crow 777, and you are listening to The Fringe FM.
From a cave in the depths of your mind, it's Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
Telepath is a weekly digital newsletter filled with the latest paranormal news, trending topics, and fresh articles from some of the most popular critical thinkers in the community today. Stay informed on your favorite paranormal podcasts and live streaming talk shows. Interact with the Telepath and upload your paranormal story or pics. It could be featured in an upcoming edition. Sign up right now for the free Telepath newsletter at paranormal.radio. That's paranormal.radio.
Hi, folks. It's troubling times, and fear is pushing emotions, which in turn pushes health the wrong direction. Do you ever get an ache because life is uneasy? Try Life Change Tea at GetTheTea.com. Life Change Tea works on your digestive tract, helping to move food through quicker and comfortably so your health is spot on. Life Change Tea may not help with world issues, but it will help with your digestive issues. A glass a day helps keep the intruders away. So, change your life today. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. If your health game is off, get on by ordering Life Change Tea. GetTheTea.com. And while you're on our site, look around at the great non-GMO organic supplements. And if you're a sales shopper, go to our specials page and see what's for you. I've been drinking the tea for 12 years, and I'm sure glad for its health benefits. Again, that's GetTheTea.com. GetTheTea.com. The tea that makes you go.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you are interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm. Or call 501-777-5631 for a consultation.
Hey, I'm J.M. DeBoard, and when I want to talk about dreams, I look up my man Joe Roop and his show, Lighting the Void.
Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS T-drift.
The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. Alex Tsakaris from Skeptiko, Skeptiko.com, or the Skeptiko podcast is here with us tonight. We are exploring the nature of evil consciousness. We're talking about his new book that he's currently working on. And before the break, I think you made a pretty good point, Alex, about, even the occultists and spiritualists and metaphysicians, all these travelers and stuff, when they start going down and naming all these things, we don't question this stuff either. It's almost like we get too spiritual about it. Even you hear to me, and I'm not trying to make anybody mad or anything like that, but you hear the New Agers talk about 3D, 4D, 5D, this, like they define so much stuff.
Right.
And we're talking about the known universe that could possibly be, based on the double slit experiment, an illusion that's just inside of us, period, with other realms inside of it. Like, we really think we understand all this. Now, I'm not saying people don't. I'm sure there are plenty of CDs and gurus and stuff that could definitely understand this, and there's the whole Merkaba mystery thing. But there was one explorer that really impressed me, and his name, I had him on the show a couple of times. His name's William Buellman. I don't know if you ever talked to him, William.
That name sounds real familiar, but I don't think I've had him on. But tell me what you gleaned out of that one.
Well, he was one of the first people that actually got me out of body. He has these methods that he does. He talks to you in your ear and tells you what to do to relax your body, but keeps your mind awake, and then does these visualization things. The next thing you know, you're standing outside your body. But he would go on these explorations, and he has in that book, he talks about belief systems. The power of belief is like the ultimate thing. And so not only him, but Robert Monroe, but especially him, he figured this out, that he would end up in these realms where people's belief systems are. We're talking about heaven, hell, other places, eastern heavens, nirvana, anywhere that if there was a belief system, it was real because we believed it. Matter of fact, he ended up floating in on this place that had a church. It looked like heaven, and everybody was celebrating their families and stuff. But when he showed up there, they all freaked out on him. The same thing with Robert Monroe. Robert Monroe ended up in places only we have no idea what they are, and met beings that you couldn't see, smell, hear, or touch, and they wanted the hell away from him because he was human, because he had too much of this crazy garbage on him that there was a word for it. I forget what they called it. It's just wacky places that they go. But William Buellman said, once I realized that everything was just a belief system, then he started, like, his body would melt away, and eventually he became just this little dot that could see everywhere. It was just this little ball of light that could move anywhere, see anything, whatever, project anything. It starts to sound really kind of Twilight Zone-y. So even these realms that, and I'm not saying evil don't exist, because it damn sure does, but even these realms and all these places and entities and all this stuff could just be another place based off of old belief systems that have been created through consciousness inside this thing, where the double slit experiment could just be showing us that we're just creating these things, right? We don't know, is what I'm saying. But what we do know is no one has the answers that consciousness isn't real. It's real. Period.
No, brother, you were saying something different, and I think what you're saying, from what I've learned, is like, I'm hearing that all over the place, that we are creating and we are co-creators. And you've actually said that a couple of times, like about the thought form thing, and that they somehow take form, take life. And man, Joe, that is exactly what I'm hearing. And I don't want to, bet the farm on that but that's like another thing that I'd want to somehow try and tease out and say, we do need to get to the bottom of this. Hey, I wanted to ask you, as I just talked to this guy, have you ever talked to Jürgen Ziva?
Actually have, yeah. I have.
Fascinating guy, huh?
Yeah. He's got consciousness mapped out, actually, if I remember correctly.
Well, and that's what made me think of it when you were talking about Robert Monroe, because like one of the things I always kind of, I don't know, I could never really totally warm up to Robert Monroe. There's so many things about it that are just genius, brilliant. You can't deny it. But then, he starts numbering things and, doesn't he have like a level 9, not levels. He calls them something else.
Yeah. Local 10, focus 10, because you can't really, he built his own language too. Cause eventually it gets so crazy. Yeah. You have to like come up with your own language.
But you don't have to. I mean, it just becomes one person's kind of thing. The interesting thing, but I'm not putting him down. I'm just saying it fits in some ways, but then like you talk to Jürgen, and like one of the things Jürgen will tell you straight up is he's a visual artist. I mean, professional visual artist, and he does incredible work. And he goes, yeah, and he's really a humble guy, German guy. And he goes, I just always had this acute visual sense, and that is kind of how stuff comes to me, and he told me a story that really kind of blew me away. He said before he even began to leave his body, and as you mentioned, just so people know, this is a guy who once he leaves his body is like on a mission to carefully chronicle, write down in detailed notes, like every experience that he has in the greatest of detail, and 40 years worth of dreams. And then these incredible, like really, really intense out of body experiences. But I kind of skipped out of the story. He said that his first experience with the darker realms were he was in an art studio, and they were doing abstract art, and the teacher kind of prompted him, and he found himself drawing this kind of dark, evil, I don't know, demonic, I hate using that word, but boom, that thing starts emerging on his canvas. And the next thing you know, an ashtray is like, it's like you see in the movies, the ashtray that's like sitting on his easel just flies across the freaking room and slams into the wall. And he's like, I had kind of brought this forth with the art, you know what I mean? And so as you were alluding to, I just think there's so much more to this. And I almost think that the dimension that we're in is almost like the worst possible filter through which to kind of even consider this stuff, but it's all we have.
Yeah, well, granted, like I think you're right, but I think Robert Monroe created all that stuff because he just needed to create a point of reference, kind of like J.R.R. Tolkien created his own world and language because he needed a point, he needed to make sense of all of it. But yeah, I think
that's cool. That's interesting. Yeah. Right.
I think people have gotten a lot better at this. It's just, there's so many they all got different stories, man. Like I hate to even say this because I've had so many different teachers of out of body stuff. The only thing that I know for sure is that there are different levels of consciousness that you can travel in. You can peel yourself out of your body, or you can project yourself out of your body, or you can dream. Now I know this is, and I've had this argument with so many people, and it's like, there's no way I can convince them because I was there, but I know I was in a place that was not the dream world. It just wasn't. I mean, I was in the whatever the physical realm is, in the in-between, whatever you want to call it. But it was not a dream. Like, and I've been trying to get back there ever since, to be honest with you, just to explore it again. Because if, and this is like to the point of the stuff you were talking about at the beginning of the show, the way the world is turning now, if we really want to take our power back, we're not going to do it with weapons. We're not going to overtake any governments. I mean, God, they'll shoot you out of the sky or drop a biological weapon on you if they ain't that we're doing that already. But we can, based on the teachings of these people, like Daskalos, things like that, we can become explorers of consciousness. What I'm trying to tell you is they're already doing that now. But if we figure it out as a people, well, if somebody launches a satellite or a rocket or something and somebody knows how to get out of body and then they can do exomatosis and actually move the rocket or whatever, they can't stop that. Now we can really fight them back because we know what they're doing, you know. It's the best way to fight evil, power, and corruption. It's the only way that we're going to even save this planet, in my opinion. And so when people say, well, magic and the occult is evil and this and that, I say, well, maybe there's an evil side to everything that you do, and everything. This whole realm is polarity. But if they're scaring the hell out of you about it, you might want to start thinking that there's a reason for it so they can keep you trapped, you know, so you don't figure out who you really are and your capabilities. That's what I think is going on.
Do you have any, do you pull up a little bit on the fight part of that? Because I know I do. I can see both parts of it. I mean, hell, I'm about fighting,
Well, what do you mean, like fight that magic is okay, or the moral issue of good and evil?
The issue of, because here's the alternative way of kind of looking at that again, and throwing this out there, I think is really kind of cool because it shows that there are all these different ways of looking at it. So one way of looking at it is the, battle of good and evil and fighting against and, all of that. The other way of looking at it is that really is more the kind of Jungian shadow integration thing, which is to say that, back to something you alluded to, the light is in you, the energy is flowing through you that is perfect. And what you've done is you've blocked it and you've distorted it. And it's not your fault because you didn't do it intentionally. You just, either you were traumatized by something on the outside, or, you just misinterpreted, or was ignorance or whatever, but you've created those blockages and you've created those connections that redirect your energy, in some other places where it isn't helping you. And if you can integrate that stuff back in, then you're cool, man. It's addition by subtraction. Just get rid of the blockages, get rid of the stuff that's, the ego state separation stuff, and you're perfect. So there isn't any battle to wage other than just letting go of your shadow shit.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Just as a work
on an individual basis, absolutely. That's perfect. But if you're a person that is trying to stop what's going on now, like for instance, there's more evidence now. We know now how weak we really are as a civilization. When this country like was first born, I mean, the people really did have the power. But now we're so dependent on all these different systems. And we wonder why we're the worst country with COVID right now. Everybody else has fixed their stuff. But in this country, they've developed so many systems and things for us to be dependent on. We don't know what's up or down. We don't know how to take care of ourselves anymore. And so we're powerless in a lot of ways. And until we start exploring that, we're not going to be able to overthrow any governments. I'm not saying that's what we should do right now, but we're not going to be able to do it without understanding these things. And people, they get all twisted up about the occult because they see the circles and the weird looking squiggly lines and all this. That's got to be evil. But what about Dr. Joe Dispenza? He just talks about, well, But you can just do this with visualization and emotion and extreme visualization. It's the same thing. It's the same thing as magic. And create realities, change paradigms. If you understand that the visualization process is the creative, what you're trying to create is a blueprint, and the emotion and all of that charge is the broadcast to get it done. And we do this consciously, or ironically enough, or unconsciously throughout our lives, all of us. So everybody's practicing magic, and magic's just a word for something we don't understand. But there are few practicing magicians out there. That makes any sense?
Well, it makes too much sense in that there's like a million different things I could pick up on. When you say magician, I always kind of, I don't know, it just kind of strikes me. I don't sit well with that, because I either see all of us being magicians all the time, or I see it as being something that then I want to kind of call into question, the sage on the stage thing that really drives me nuts, like, you're here, man. Whoever you are, and you think you're magic, you think you're magical, you think you're a magician. Well, then no, you're here now, level with me, nose to nose. You're going to have to do more than that. What do you mean when you say magician?
Well, magician, no, I don't mean like a stage magician. I'm talking about like.
I know, but why do we want to give our power? Think somebody has more power. Who has more power than I do?
Nobody. That's my point. That's why all of this information is public now. That's why there were practicing magicians that broke their vows, caused all kinds of stuff because they knew that this was everybody's birthright, and they died for it. They were bound and determined to get the information out. It's just a word, kind of like when we look at a fork, we call it a fork, but we could have named it something else. Magic is just a word for a process of, a series or formulas of things or a practice that we really don't know what else to call it besides that. There's mystics and then there's magicians. There's two different kinds of people. Mystics are like the meditating people, the one with consciousness kind of thing. They just let things happen. There's a lot of surrendering going on. And then you have like practicing magicians who are playing with the forces, the planets, the elemental forces, all of the symbolism that's involved, all of the different spiritual structures that are involved. And they understand the process of the subconscious and the emotion and the drama and how to trigger the left and right brain and get them to sync up and make something happen. It goes out, and when it comes back, it's not like Harry Potter or anything. It has to come back through the laws of nature to manifest, and always looks like a coincidence every single time. But only the practicing magician knows that it's working. He can't prove coincidences, but enough of them start adding up, and you say, oh, I think this is kind of real,
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know, Joe. I hear what you're saying, and I think you could make a case with some evidence there that would be pretty compelling. I know that because I've seen some of the same data, but I've also seen a lot of people that claim to be spiritually enlightened or spiritually advanced or spiritually adept at doing certain things. And the next thing you know, they're screwing all their devotees when they're telling everyone else to be celibate, and they're taking all the money, and they're just not developed in the way that they said they were. And on one hand, we looked at him and go, well, wait a minute, but he was able to do this, and he was able to telepathically do this. And I saw him, even do this more magical thing. And it's like, I'm not sure what we're measuring there when we say someone is, further down the path. I'm just not.
Well, you have to
still
separate.
Exploring that.
You have to separate people that understand certain esoteric laws and how they work. Just like atheists will cry out to Jesus in a moment of desperation, and for some reason it saves them, but they're not moral. They could give a crap. For some reason they do it out of desperation. like these laws in nature work regardless of moral issue, fiber, or what you're trying to become or how enlightened you are. The understanding of Hermetics is understanding the laws of nature, cause and effect, vibration, polarity, ebb and flow, those types of things. And it don't really matter what side of the fence you're on or how enlightened you're trying to become. That's why all the prophets, including Aleister Crowley, who called himself a prophet, most of them are assholes, but they did spread a good message, and some of them performed miracles, so to speak, right? So when I talk about magic, I'm talking about Hermetics, the laws of nature, the laws of the conscious and unconscious, things like that. If you want to talk about enlightenment and coming into your higher self, well, there's words for that too that we've created called like theurgy, thaumaturgy, meditation, chakra alignment, kundalini, those types of things, or just plain old good old moral fiber.
One of the things,
they're separate.
One of the things we keep kind of dancing around there, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, so I'm going to ask this as well as I've asked you all the other tough questions. Where do you get what do you think we should be doing? What is the ultimate goal here? Because the other thing I see that I haven't been able to quite tease out of this is what I call the kind of spiritual materialism. It's like we're all comfortable with the idea of materialism being fake, and just go shop more and get more crap that you don't need. And, we know that's a lose deal.
Mm-hmm.
But I see a lot of people kind of playing that same game wrapped up with a material bow on it. Let's get further down whatever for some goal of whatever. I mean, where are you trying to get with this? Isn't some of this just letting go? Isn't it ultimately about letting go and not trying to advance that little ego state that we think is so fundamental to who we are?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, there's people there's a lot of people that believe different things about that. Like some people believe the ego is necessary for individuality. And there's others that are like I was talking earlier, mysticism, right? Oneness, meditation, point your fingers together and just be one with everything. Okay, well, you can do that. You can feel the bliss and you can feel the love and get there and understand that we're all one, right? But then if that's the case, then why was life created to begin with? Why all the separation? Why all the chaos and stuff? See, and then you start to figure out like maybe whatever created this just wanted to experience something in a physical realm, or actually wanted to, whatever this is, experience physical concepts. Like not just think about it or be conscious about it, but actually make a little sphere, put all this stuff together and create it so we can live in it and actually experience these things. Maybe life is the greatest thing in the universe, not the other way around. The separation, the journey, I don't know. But it just depends on each person's individual path and experience and why they're here. What do they want to experience? Do they want to experience oneness? Does another person want to experience just living on the beach their whole life? Some of them come here to suffer for some reason, apparently, just so their soul can experience it. It's really weird, man. These are all theories I've heard.
Right. We're in sync, right? So like we hear these theories and then we try and fit them back into the model and we can't, right? Because I only have one model. It's me. Yeah. And that's what I think everyone's hang up is they only have one kind of point of perspective. And I can listen to your model and hear your experiences, which I profit greatly from. That's why I seek that out. That's why I do what I do. But ultimately, when I close my eyes and then I wake up in the middle of the night after the wrong kind of dream, it's just me, man. I just have to figure it out by myself, and that's that I guess is the hard part, but also kind of the fun part.
Right. But how do you do that? See, that's the thing. You made a radio show, you used the internet or a podcast, you interacted with people, you have relationships, you're asking questions, right? So the curiosity part's cool for you trying to figure out what this is all about. Joe Blow down the road could probably care less. He probably just wants to have a family and, you know, love and watch TV for some reason. That's about it. Love might be the best thing he's looking for. It's really strange, but I do believe that there is, I don't know. I think there's something else going on too that's keeping us hidden from. There has to be a prime directive, I would think. Like, you either believe that this planet is sentient and consciousness lives outside of humans, it lives in everything, or you don't. And if you believe that, then there has to be an agenda here. So I don't know.
Is one of the things you're saying there, Joe, is that, and I think this is good. I had not thought about it in this way, but it sounds almost like you're saying, hey, if there is the magician, to use that word, the guy who's doing that, maybe that's his journey. Maybe that's his job to explore that in a particular way. And we shouldn't look for we can look for some guideposts and some general direction, but we shouldn't expect everybody to pursue the same path in the same way, kind of thing.
Oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. Everybody's got different paths that are experiencing different things, but there's also different schools of mystery. There's top level religion, and then there's Western mystery, Eastern mystery, all of these things. And this is why I kind of like studying the Hermetics. All of these schools kind of like lead back to these fundamental Hermetic laws of nature, which some of the biggest esotericists and people that studied this stuff understood, like, you know, Plato, Pythagoras. I mean, we can go on, and they understood, well, man, there's some fundamental like stuff going on here, regardless of what your religion or mystery school is, that is across the board. So, I think the journey to figure that out is important because it empowers us, and it also shows us what's being used against us. Because really, we think there's a lot of times people, these conspiracy theorists, they think that there's these like black magician occultists in a dark tower with runes tattooed all over them running the world. But they're probably just sickos or nerds that read a bunch of books and figured it out. And now, you know, they got families and bloodlines and all that stuff, whatever. But nobody here has more power than the other person. It's all just a matter of understanding, perception, and a willing to study and figure it out. I mean, let's face it, some people just don't give a shit.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's I want to put that on one side, but the part that I guess I react to that is it gets back into this battle thing. You know, it's like, oh, they're nerds and they're just doing their, you know, magical kind of stuff and they don't know what they're doing. And, you know, but it's like, to what end? Let me throw this on the table. Back to this thing. So Ted Bundy, I'm watching Netflix, which Netflix is a trip these days too, right? Yeah. I mean, I won't even go there, but I'm watching Ted Bundy tapes. The guy who goes in and actually interviews Ted Bundy has 100 hours of tapes with Ted Bundy, and he puts together this documentary. And Ted Bundy, his story is kind of interesting in a way, in that he had kind of a pretty normal upbringing, right? Church on Sunday, little league, mom loves him. But Ted, from an early age, had this kind of fixation with sex, you know, back to one of your points earlier, right? And it kind of got a little bit twisted for Ted. Kind of got into a little bit of kind of unusual, exotic kind of things. But here's the thing. Back to my buddy Tom Zinzer. He goes, I noticed that it had kind of become a different ego state, a different separation, dissociative identity. He's not saying it in those exact words, but that's what he's saying. It became a part of me that I couldn't control. And eventually there came to be an entity that controlled that. Now, I'm telling you, Joe, you go watch that documentary. This is what he says. No one pays any attention to it because, of course, that's just crazy serial killer. There isn't any such thing as entities that occupy people that get a split personality that has this kind of sexual fantasy realm in it. But that's exactly what the guy says, that a demon, if you want to use that term, penetrated through his psyche in the form of this thought form that he had created, this ego state. And that's what compelled him to do this, and that he wasn't in control at some point. Now, that's a really specific explanation for what happened. And then I run into this guy, this clinical psychologist, who says, yeah, that's exactly how it works. So I'm not saying that that necessarily contradicts with, you know, any one of the different things that you've got, or you know, possible ways of looking at it that you've laid out, whether it be Monroe Institute or Hermetics or, you know, whatever. But I mean, there's a specific, you get what I'm saying? There's a specific way.
I do. I think, yeah, there's a specific process to how that happens and how integration works into the human body. And then there's the personality disorders or associative disorders where they're not even there and they're somebody else, right? So this whole thing is about your, like what you're talking about in your book, which maybe you might want to, and I've been down this road before too, like trying to understand evil, number one, and why the hell it's here in the first place, because it just shouldn't be, because it's so god awful, right? So what the hell's really going on? Well, yeah, I mean, like it's easy to define that based on polarity. Well, there's good, so there's got to be evil. That way, you know, we can have life and all. But it does. I mean, I really want to get down to the root of why I think you're investigating this. I will just go ahead and admit this. It does piss me off, like most good people in the world too. Like, why the hell does it have to exist? Does it really? You know, do we really have to live in a place where evil exists for us to have fundamental life? Because I don't like watching little children get hurt or any of that crazy stuff. And it doesn't make sense to us morally, right? It doesn't make sense at all. And most people, when they start going down that road, they want to stop because they don't like how they feel and they don't want to feel like crap all the time. And I really commend you though for investigating this stuff, because it should be investigated. It's not investigated enough, I don't think.
Well, it does seem like some of the answers we've settled on are pretty lame.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
this hasn't been lame. Like, this is like a real conversation, you know. But you look at most of the conversations that are being had out there about evil. I mean, they're just ridiculous. I mean, they're either religious or they're denial, you know.
Well,
Yeah.
You take Buddhism too, right? Those guys, they're so enlightened and one with everything. But life is suffering, and you grow through suffering. And suffering helps you understand what's good. And once you understand that, then you're enlightened, and then you hold your fingers up, right? And then everybody thinks you're special. But why do we have to suffer to learn anything? You know,
I gotta tell you, I understand exactly where you're coming from, and I don't know Buddhism, but I was just educated. I was just schooled about a month ago when I interviewed a guy named Charlie Morley, who is like a lucid dream instructor.
Yeah.
Very interesting guy. And he's also a Buddhist, and like really studied in a monastery for like, I don't know if it was 3, 4, 5 years like that. And he just kind of educated me that there's a lot more to that tradition and what they know and what they, and they're pretty, what I like about them is they hold it pretty loosely. They're like, hey, we don't know if this is true, but we have documented, kind of back to your point, we've documented 75 layers of consciousness in this realm that have to do with darker entities. And there's 76 of them, and here's what they are. And to that point, and Charlie actually wrote a book on this. His Buddhist teacher, you know, was involved in helping him lucid dream and doing dream yoga. And he says, okay, Charlie, now you have to go to the hell realms. That's where you have to go next with your with your lucid dreaming. He's like, I don't want to do that. He goes, hey, okay, you don't have to. He goes, but that's what I think you need to do. So it was just an eye opener to me in terms of my kind of commercialized view of Buddhism and, you know, smiling Buddha and, you know, all light and love. And it's like, no, they're saying exactly the same thing that you said, Joe. And that, of course they would, because there seems to be some reality to it, that there is this realm. And you know what I mean? Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is. It is. But it does make me I mean, you're asking the big questions, man. Like, it's the whole reason why I did this show, because we have to be honest with ourselves, right? We have to say, like, we have to look around and realize the big questions nobody has the answers to, right? Like, not the real answers. And the evil is it's a bastard, man. It's like some of the stuff that we do to each other is just unfathomable. Why we do that? How any decent human being could do that. And you have to conclude, and I don't know where you're going to get to that in your book just based on your research, but you have to conclude that, well, you know, maybe there is people walking around the face of the earth that aren't human or are possessed or some other life form, maybe, because most of the people I run into are not like Ted Bundy or these crazy people that are hurting children, you know, and
well, you know, I don't want to blow past a point that you just made, because I think it was a really good one. And it's something I haven't really spent a lot of time considering. And my head was kind of spinning when you said it, you know, like you said, like a really simple, profound point. Like, damn, why do we have to have evil? Why do we have to have this? We all claim that we don't want it. You know, why are we seem to be just kind of swimming in it, especially more than ever? But I also want to tie that back to another point you made about, you know, I was going, well, you know, maybe it's an addition by subtraction, and maybe, you know, kind of a Jungian kind of shadow integration thing. And you go, hey, maybe that works personally, but I'm not so sure, Alex, that could work, you know, globally to fight the evil that we see. And then, you know, this is like almost a trite kind of new age-ish kind of thing, but, you know, change yourself and you change the world kind of thing. Maybe that's where we're at the end of the day anyway, is maybe the only evil we really have to worry about is our own evil and our own shadow and our own, the fact that we can see it in other people means that it's in us, you know, which is always true. And maybe that's really the game.
Yeah, exactly. That's the Jungian thing, right? Like, we want to point our fingers and say, look at that sick bastard over there and what he did. But what Carl Jung was talking about is like, well, until the human itself becomes incapable of that, until the human realizes, I am capable of what that person is doing.
Yeah.
It won't
stop. If you're not capable of it, then you can't even see it.
That's
because
right.
Think about that. You know, I think about that really deeply. Like, you know, if it never even you can't even conceive of it, then you can't see it in anyone else. But if you can see it in someone else, it's because there's a part of you that understands that is a part of you.
Exactly. It's in you somewhere, and you don't want to see it, right? That's the shadow integration. Like, you don't want to say, there is a murderer inside me, there's a rapist inside me. Hell no, there's not me.
Right.
Well, if that's the case, then all those theories go out the window, and all these experiments with the consciousness go out the window, because it is inside. Until every single human on the face of the earth doesn't even know what the word, you know, murder, rape, or whatever is, doesn't even know what it is, then it's always going to be there. It's really strange, man. It's odd to think about.
It is, but, you know, and that's the other thing, I guess, that some people get hung up on the idea that, gee, you know, all this talk about evil, you're staring into the abyss, that's what you're going to become. And it's like, I don't buy into that. I mean, I'm not an evil guy. I don't think more about evil. I'm just exploring it. If anything, if anything, it's kind of helped me. It's helped me with my family. It's helped me with my kids. It's helped me to kind of see some of the potholes, maybe some of the things in myself, and I think it can also let you let go of things, a little bit, where you're not quite as, just because all this stuff is about creating more personal freedom in a way, more flexibility to kind of make different choices.
Well, besides the super sick stuff, most people lash out and do evil things because they're in pain, because they didn't get the love they needed. I'm not making excuses for evil acts, but that's why people lash out to begin with and hurt others, is because deep down they weren't loved properly, maybe abused possibly, when they came here as a baby. We were talking about this with Mary the other night, totally innocent, happy, ready to love, and just got warped somehow, and so we don't understand that yet. I think what could be happening here, two things. I'd like to think, honestly, that we're growing something, like we're becoming something else, maybe an angelic form or something, just anything bigger and better than what we are, along with the planet. That sounds nice. Or scenario number 2, we're just down here playing on a chessboard in a playground full of all these different polarities and laws and stuff, and it don't really mean anything except consciousness is real, and whatever put us down here just wants to see what this is all about. It's a crazy experiment. I hope that scenario number 2 is wrong, but there is a lot of things that show that it could be right. You see, like you see that movie, Devil's Advocate, right? With Al Pacino and Keanu Reeves.
Just watched it the other
He's like,
day,
look, but don't touch, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, he's up there laughing his sick ass off, right? And if you think about it, well, how wrong is that? I'm not trying to say I agree with the devil, but you set the laws in opposition. You created us to have certain needs, wants, desires, feelings, and then the laws got set in opposition. For what? To make everybody angry and pissed off, Like, it does make a little bit of sense.
It does in kind of in one way of looking at it. I look at it a different way. I'm drawn to, and I'm not saying one's right or wrong. This is like the process we have to go through, and we have to figure out a way to move towards this in a somewhat scientific way to try and figure some of this out. So it's not just two guys,
Yeah, right.
And not that we're arguing, because you're my brother on this stuff. You're my Dharma brother on exploring this stuff. But I'd go back to that model of addition by subtraction, and that, like, I love when you said, hey, I was just a baby, and I was perfect, but I already see the things that I've created that trigger me, the jealousy trigger, or the fucking domination trigger, or, all these little things, and they're real in me. And it's not like, I don't know how they happened. I'm like, yeah, I would punch that bastard in the face again. I did it before, and I would do it again. And then, but I can come to a different understanding of that too. And when I come to that different understanding, then I've kind of reintegrated one of those things that was there that I created. But I do see that I'm the creator of this all these neuroses that I've had. I'm the creator of this kind of mess. So in that part, no, I don't relate to Al Pacino, look, don't touch. So,
yeah, right. Yeah.
I can, no one ever, that was me. I decided all that stuff were silly rules and stuff. And if I want to blame the church for doing that, and the Greek Orthodox Church that told me when I was too young to decide otherwise that I need to walk up there and kiss that old man's hand so he would drop some bread in my hand, and that was what was feeding me, and that I needed to kneel to him. And if I can forgive myself because I was susceptible at 7 years old to be brainwashed. That's fine. But I'm not 7 anymore. I can change that programming. I can fix that, and I'm not, so then I'm not raging like Al Pacino is. I'm not, it's just me. And that's what I want anyway, because if it's me, then I have it under my control. If it's, the guy upstairs, then yeah, I'm screwed.
Yeah. Well, you were smart enough to not get ritualized. That's all those churches are doing, is ritual magic, playing on your emotions and your guilt and stuff, doing the same rituals and using the same symbols.
Yeah. I was totally ritualized though. Right. I mean,
yeah.
But that is also the path out too. It's like, it's not, you can get out of it. It isn't impossible to break the spell,
Right. In that scenario, it's no, because you weren't traumatized as bad. Like, yeah, in that scenario, you could totally get out because you start using your head. And you start thinking, oh, this doesn't make any damn sense. I think still understanding, not just understanding consciousness. And this is where a lot of people, I get a little afraid, but I still believe this, that until we take those steps out, kind of like go where no man has gone before, and we're actually willing to explore it in other ways than just meditation and prayer, willing to explore these realms ourselves, we're not really going to get to the bottom of this, because the books aren't going to do it. I think it's time, like, this is just my opinion, I think it's time for at least everybody that's brave enough to take a few steps out and say, okay, well, what's the worst that can happen here? I'm not going to go to hell and burn, because that's just illogical. I'm not going to hurt anybody, I don't think. Let's still be careful, tread lightly. But we don't have enough, in my opinion, we still don't have enough behind this. Even though there's several organizations and all this stuff, like, Dean Radin, Monroe Institute, we don't have enough behind this to even get close to understanding it yet. Although we are understanding a lot more nowadays.
Joe, I think that is super duper powerful. I think that's what I came here for tonight, actually, because I think that's brilliant. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Only I think I've been afraid to really go there. And what you just said and the way you summed it up, it is, I mean, think of that. That is scientific. You're saying that the path forward has to be, we need more people that are going to go explore that in a methodical way and report back.
Yeah. People are going to have to step out into the realms of consciousness, whatever way they need to do it, other than just prayer and meditation, which those are fantastic. But there's so much stuff out there that's been reported. Like, we need to get the answers to this. We don't have enough feedback yet to say what's what. We really don't. But, if millions of people decided to start doing it and we got that feedback, well, now we got an information system. Now we've got data. Now, you see what I mean? Like, we can really start working with stuff here. I don't know if that's going to happen.
No, there's no reason. What are the barriers to making that happen? There aren't any.
Exactly.
People just have to decide to do it. So, no, that's brilliant.
And so the powers that be, the conspiracy theorists, all these people are saying, and they make sure that, that you don't go too far into those realms, because it's evil, and that's where all the evil stuff is. Well, no, evil, we know what evil is. It's not drawing a circle or a symbol. It's doing things like what Ted Bundy is and this kind of stuff. Well, you could get possessed by those things. Well, can I? Just because that guy did doesn't mean I'm going to, right? Like, but be careful. That's all I'm saying. Like, we just have to have people that are brave enough to do
it. And I think there's a whole methodology we'd have to develop. There's, and I'm working with some people to kind of explore some of the tools that might come about. And I have, all this stuff has to be free, has to be freely available. That's my kind of thing. I'm not into creating any products or selling anything.
Yeah.
But like Jürgen's working on something. And when I just talked to Jürgen the other day, Jürgen Ziva, And he's talking about virtual reality thing, and we're like, has to be open source, has to be just where anyone can do it, anyone can try it. But then we have to have some, structured way of doing it. I talked to Jeffrey Martin. Now he has Dr. Jeffrey Martin. Now he has a course that kind of does it, but he's working on some technology. I mean, you were so right. I mean, that's what we need to do. We're running out of time here, aren't we, buddy?
Yeah, we got like a minute left, man. So tell us about when the book's going to launch.
Well, now I got to go rewrite the damn thing. After this conversation, we got a different plan.
Yeah,
we got a different plan going forward.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. So thanks for coming on, though. Seriously, it's good to have you back on.
I love connecting with you, man. It's been too long.
You guys got to go check out the podcast, though. Skeptiko with a K on the. That is, everybody knows you, man, and they know you because you're willing to ask the tough questions, and especially if you don't agree, you don't play. You're a super nice guy, but if you don't agree with something, you're going to say it, and I think that's why you got a lot of followers and you got a lot of listeners, because you really are trying to get to some of these answers. And it doesn't matter how many people tell you, well, you're never going to know the answers to that stuff. Like you ain't buying that. I think that's what I like about you. Like, I want to figure it out,
Well, yeah, I think we can say the same for you, that what you said there, you want to figure it out. That's what I always loved about, the void lighting thing, man. We're Dharma brothers.
Right on. Well, you guys, we got to roll out here, but thanks for coming on. And then I'll leave the links in the archives. Please don't copy the show without written permission. Music was by Chronox and Steezy Stevie. I hope you guys have a good weekend. Big shout out to Pacho, our producer, Fringe FM team, and you guys in the Fringe FM chat. Have a good weekend. We love you. Good night.
And opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, its sponsors, affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.